is almost 4 in the morning. I've been up for a good hour breathing and talking to Crude. I'm so anxious. I don't know if I had a nightmare. I don't tend to remember any dream content. I haven't for 10 years. Yeah, I'm so anxious. I'm feeling so anxious. And I did a few rounds of really deep breathing, and I wasn't going to write or do anything. I took some vitamin D and ate a couple bites of yogurt, hoping that I would get some gut bacteria going. And when you feed those bugs, if you get the good bugs, the right kind of bugs for it, and you feed them like a vitamin D supplement, they'll actually naturally produce a really usable form of melatonin for you within your own system. So usually that'll work. And then I kind of thought about how I skipped that dose of Wellbutrin and kind of regret not doing it sooner. We talked about the SSRIs affecting sex drive differently from the Wellbutrin, and then we talked about how the Wellbutrin talked about how the Wellbutrin tends to, or like the purpose, the cause of that, or the reason for that is that the bupropion it works on a dopamine system instead of a serotonin system. The reason I bring that up is just that when you start a medication that's an SSRI, it's not, it's a really bad time. Like, I've started SSRIs, and I cold turkey stopped an SNRI, which is the serotonin and the norepinephrine systems. It's really it's painful. It's painful on levels that I don't think people know you can have pain. So it's not just physical and emotional. Like, it's excruciating. But the dopamine system, the Wellbutrin, I don't have that. I don't have a 2-week window where, like with Zoloft, it took about 2 weeks to 10 days for it to show an effect or to start working. and during that time, if I took too high of a dose too soon, I think that's if that one's called titration. So when you're going up, it's titration. When you're going down, you're tapering off. So if you titrate too fast, or if I titrate too fast with an SSRI or an SNRI, it's a bad time. Or if I take it, if I do either, really, if it's a titration or a taper, if I do either too fast, the serotonin / serotonin norepinephrine things will have side effects. And I'm noticing that with the Wellbutrin, there's not. And it only takes a couple days. Even if I'm really, really bad, it'll take 4 days for me to feel the effect. And you don't have to titrate with the Wellbutrin. You can just start at what has been studied as being the therapeutic dose. So like that threshold, you need to put this much into the average human body in order to get what you're looking for. You don't have to start at like half or a quarter of that and work your way up to it. I know that that's not the anxiety. And this is, I guess I'm videoing this because when I'm in this anxious, panicked mode, or this feeling of this sensation that like I can't sleep. I took a 4-hour nap and that was as good as I could do. And it's not because I didn't, eat and supplement with melatonin. I go through, and I kind of tell myself just a story about what my body's doing. And it's usually just a really dry story, which usually I'm super wordy and descriptive, but in these times, sometimes the most helpful thing is to so Alicia, right now your body is responding to stimuli, and that translates to the racing heart that you feel, and that, causes, maybe different breathing, which will maybe affect the O2 level inside of that, crazy gorgeous body, and that's going to affect other things. And so I do like this chain reaction, just kind of walk myself through the story of what's going on inside of my body as I'm experiencing this distressing sensation. And it really does help. But sometimes, like, there have been those times when I can't seem to do it. So I'll call like a suicide hotline or something, and oh man, it's always the worst idea. Because nobody thinks to do that, They want to, like, dig their finger into the wound and or sign you up with a billing code as soon as possible. Get you off the phone, make sure you're going to sign up for goods and services. They'll maybe even diagnose you in their minds, while they're talking to you, and just, okay, yeah, this person is blah, blah, blah. They're just depressed. They need this good and service to fix it. So I'm just gonna babble about what I'm anxious about, I guess, because I've babbled about what my body's doing. I've told that story to myself. We included the Wellbutrin in the brain chemical part of the story, and I've been breathing and just trying to do this really dry, lecture to myself. That didn't work. And then I tried to calm myself by listening to Noam Chomsky. He's got this beautiful tone that calms me. Stephen Fry lights my brain on fire, but Noam calms me, and he lit my brain on fire instead, like 3 a.m. Woke up at 2:30, and anyway, it's almost 4, so, and Noam was talking about these things 8 years ago. What really made me have to stand up and turn it off is just, he's talking about big countries acknowledging the climate problem. This was 8 years ago, at least. I mean, this was uploaded 8 years ago, so he was talking to them about, like, we're acknowledging this crisis, and yet we're obsessed with drilling for oil in Antarctica. Like, we have these awful plans, and he described like a mindset of for a really long time after the Second World War. It was America had this idea that they would obtain the world, like that they would just have this, like, golden zone of plenty, and it was theirs for the taking, and there's this discussion, or like a rhetoric that goes on after post-war that says, like, whose fault is it that we lost China? And he makes this really good point, like, I can't lose your computer. I can lose my computer. What the fuck? Like, and it really, so I'm dreading leaving the house tomorrow. And that's really what it is. And I don't even know that I'm going to have the funds that I think I would normally have, because there's been a holiday this week. So I don't know, I told the fish store people that I needed some hose valves for my bubblers, and they were special ordered, so I feel obliged. They were going to be there yesterday on Tuesday. I feel kind of obligated to make sure that I show my face and pay for that. I gave myself an extra day. I said maybe I'd be there Thursday instead of Wednesday. So it's I don't even know that it's going to happen tomorrow, and I'm losing sleep over it, because the last time I went out was the 5th of July, and after I went to the beach that morning, I needed to get gas. My gas light was on. Granted, it's like 10 miles from home, but my gas light was on, and I needed to just zip by the gas station and get a few gallons and before I go home, so that when I leave home, I have enough gas so that I don't have to stop on my way out of town if I need to go out of town. And I zipped around. I tried all different ways to get to the gas station, to get to the pump, and there were just so many like extra people. And I was real snotty and gross when I was talking about tourism. And like, no, I like, it is gross. I hate that about this culture. I hate that that's, it's justified so that we can maintain our infrastructure. But the infrastructure wasn't made for this many people. And this is a pretty tame year for tourism. But like, even then, like the infrastructure, the road systems, the grocery stores can't stock enough. Like, give me a break. There are like 2 stoplights in town. You think we can have this many extra cars and you don't think it's stressful for locals to have to schedule an hour and 45 minutes for them to get to work, and it usually only takes them 15 at the most if everyone's getting to work at the same time in the winter. And so there's that. And then once I get off of the peninsula, out of the, more touristy, whatever, and I get into where, it's a half hour away to go shopping or to go to the pet store, like do things that you have to go away for, because we live on a little peninsula that's only funded by fucking tourism. It's hit and miss. And then once you get into Astoria, you have like a small town with the cocky, ego, like wounded attitude of a city, but it's small. So it's a weird feeling place. I love it. I've always loved that little river town, but and it feels weird. And there's a lot of like, I have to remember that the last time I went out of town was about a week ago, and I'm doing the U-Scan. I pretty much exclusively do my grocery shopping at the U-Scan because I don't know, it's just always a bad experience to have somebody check your groceries at home. So I'm scanning my groceries, and this machine is just like has a bone to pick with me. Like, it just doesn't like the way I'm looking at it or something. And like everything, like I'm getting towards the end, I'm almost done, and people are just like, I have that cart loaded, and it's a U-Scan, and so people are lining up, stacking up, and like I'm trying, and like every other item is yelling at me, and I've got my mask, this was weeks ago, so I'm still wearing my mask, and I'm muttering under my mask all these cuss words, and they get louder and louder, and I feel myself cussing out Jesus. And this lady looks at me and she says, "Can I help you?" And it took everything in me to just say no. Because I wanted to say, yeah, you know what? You can really help me if you can make me understand why busybodies like you can't stay in your own fucking lane. Who are you? Do you work here? Can you help me? Can you type in the code and make this thing stop yelling at me? No, you can't. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, that's a week ago, and I'm still this pissed off about it. Some lady getting offended that I'm having a struggle, and I'm saying, fuck Jesus, fuck you, Jesus, Sorry that hurt your ears. And it brings me up to the busybodies at the beach, who are these awful enabling people that, like, the people that leave the shit on the beach, they do it knowing, like, oh, it'll give the busybodies something to do in the morning. It'll make them feel good about what they did tomorrow, These are the same busybody people that like demanded that their craft store stay open because they need to be kept busy. They need to go into that craft store. They need to pull up to the curb and make that craft store, bring them supplies to keep their busybody hands going. They said it was because, there's a mask shortage and I'm doing my part and I'm sewing masks because I care. You're sewing masks because you're a busybody. The hospitals didn't take those masks. They couldn't. They weren't to code. Like, there has to be a standard for medical supplies. Things have to get really fucking bad before they'll use handmade masks in hospitals. Do you know what happened to all of the masks you donated to the Joann stores? Most of them were given back to people or were just given to the community. Were used to hand out to customers. We had to be sure, though. I felt like I had to be sure to say, like, nobody has washed this. This was donated. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it's been. Please wear this on your face if you want to shop here. This culture of enabling, so like it's wasteful. Forcing GameStop, like all this shit that's not essential. Not essential. Retail workers should not have had their doors open. You do not need to go in and pick out your own bananas when it means exposing somebody to a lethal situation. If these retail workers needed to keep their hours, have everybody show up and have everybody fill BOPUS orders. For a year, for a year and a half, for 2 years until we figure this shit out. You're still making money. People are still getting their shit. You're still meeting needs. You're still getting paid. You're more or less in a more controlled environment. At least you can keep tabs on, if there's exposure among your employees, because that's the only people in that building. How hard would that have been? But no. Wasteful. How many people fucking died because of this enabling busybody bullshit? Like sponsors every day just enabling people, slowly killing themselves by feeding self-fulfilling prophecies based on emotional, somatic, triggered trauma responses and codependent exchanges of emotion. This isn't helping. It's enabling. It's feeding a culture that says, hey, there's something wrong with you. I bet there's a good in services that can fix that. Let me make sure you have access to that. Instead of, here's why what you need is within you all along. I know, it sounds like some stupid Harry Potter, like fantasy storyline, but it's closer to reality than what we're dealing with. And I know that what we're dealing with is not as close to reality as I am. It's not so important. I'm not so important. How I feel about fucking people is not so important that I should be losing, it's 4 a.m. I need to be asleep so that I can wake up in a couple hours and be at the store to do my shit before, everybody else wakes up. Like, I need to, you can't be eccentric and just do things the way you want to do them. Like, you have to, you can't be eccentric and poor. You'll die. Like, I can't be a raging snob, hating humanity better than humanity, knows better than humanity. Like, I can't be that narcissistic and just go out and be among people and expect my day to go well. Like, if I'm going to go out in public, I know, especially the way this feels, I need to do it as early as possible. Like, as soon as that store opens, I need to get in there, get my shit, and leave. So it's going to be another one of those, probably, I'm not going to be able to, and here I'm feeding myself, self-fulfilling prophecies. I don't need any help with that. Probably not going to go back to sleep. The sun's going to rise, and I'm going to start drinking coffee or something stupid so that I can stay awake, so that I can still do my stuff as early as possible. And then by the time I get home, I'm going to be a zombie. Probably pretty loopy. May or may not catch some Z's in the middle of the day. May or may not be a good idea to even try that. And then, depending on what I decide to do tomorrow or today about the Wellbutrin situation, maybe tomorrow night's just going to be the same story. And this isn't like a nervousness about a stressful job, a business meeting in the morning, or an important phone call I have to make. This is what my little narcissist does to me every day. And I made that crack about, like, have you hugged your narcissist today? And we have to. Like, I understand this, but right now I'm so angry with my narcissist that I feel like if I tried to hug it, I'd probably end up punching it instead. So I need to take a walk. Because sitting and thinking about how unhelpful or like what a piece of crap I am for having this sensation go on inside of my body isn't going to make it stop at all. It's just it's an insatiable anger. And when I was a teenager, I thought it was like, I learned the word angst. I think it was in a Silverchair song, or maybe it was, I don't know, one of those. Angst was used, and it was one of the writers that I was listening to at the time, one of the musicians. And when I picked up that word, it was like, oh, that's what this is. I'll grow out of it. Enjoy it while I can. Like people talk about it with nostalgia when they're older. So just, you'll grow out of it. And then it just became this like self-defeating thing that probably started out as a part of that protection ego thing. And it just, instead of kind of burning out, it's almost like the fire, it has been fueled. So it's like the angst just turned into like a bottomless pit of pessimism and hopelessness. There's a yeah but and an argument against every solution. I think Noam was just talking about a biologist a behavioral biologist, somebody a researcher who recently unfortunately passed away. Recently, again, this was 8 years ago. Anyway, this guy was talking about intelligence really being like a bad thing. Like intelligence is proving to be kind of a poison in our world. And I'm not trying to say that I'm intelligent at all. I'm sure if I was smart enough, I wouldn't be so pissed. But I don't know. I understand that being neurotic for the point of being neurotic isn't healthy. That's not. It doesn't make you smart to be neurotic. I know that. And I do make it a point to be mindful of how, overran and wrapped up in my thoughts I am. And just kind of try to be an observer of that process or that phenomena more than like identifying with it. And I know what that feels like. I've gotten better at that, and that's nice, and I've got that going for me. But it doesn't make it go away, and it doesn't make it less. I guess that's the thing. It doesn't make it less distressing, or it doesn't make me lose less sleep. Which is odd, right? Like, what are those? are they electrons? When there's some kind of particle that when we're looking at them, they're there, but when we're not, they're not. Or when we're looking at them, they're somewhere else. Anyway. You would think that if you're observing your thought, it would, when we talk about how talking about our feelings kind of takes the power out of them, you'd think that as you're observing it, it would maybe be less intense, especially if you're identifying with it from an outside, like blown up, bigger perspective. I'm looking at this from the outside. You break that identification with the sensation or the feeling or the thought or the situation. But it doesn't, like in this instance, it doesn't. I've had a provider tell me that I clearly have a very strong mind-body connection. It seems really simplistic and dumb, but like, it was profound. I don't know if that, she doesn't work at the clinic anymore. She was a crisis, psychologist, social worker with the, just health clinic, the medical clinic. I don't know if she knew how profound that was for me to acknowledge. Like, I've always known it, but for that to be a thing that I'm told in a medical setting is, I don't know, it was meaningful at the time. Just, I have this very strong mind-body connection, and they affect each other. So there's I've kind of touched on or like started to talk about before there are these schools of thought that really want to lean more one way than the other as far as is this dysfunction, this thing that we're identifying, categorizing, and treating with goods and services. Is this thing biological, or is this thing behavioral? They want to differentiate and label so that they can throw the right good at it. And I guess the line isn't that clear, and I'm finding that I can appreciate that about my body and my mind. This little meat suit that I get a boogie around in, this thing, like there is unity and oneness to be had and to be integrated within it. The way it is right now, the way it is at any given time, isn't the end all be all of its potential. The human experience can be pretty grand. And I don't know what's going on with my body. I don't know why in a world that has been using hormonal birth control in one form or another for it's been a while. Not a long time, but it's been a while. Enough for scientific literature to have a pretty general consensus that actually, if you're taking supplemental hormones, if you're taking extra estrogen, it's usually like the doctor will kind of, like, I get it, they'll pull you off when you're 45, 50 to see, like, is your body ready to start premenopause? Is it ready to start that transition? Because when you're supplementing, how is your body going to do that on its own? I get that. But for whatever reason, the times that I have taken it as, a teenager, the first couple of things, I think it was the shot. I wanted the shot because I didn't trust myself with remembering to take a pill. And that made me absolutely batshit. And then come to find out that was true for a lot of people, when you inject, that much. And then, so it tapers, as hormones do, but like the injection just didn't suit my systems at all, so didn't do that. I think I've tried like pills, and it's never gone well. But again, it was like teenagehood and early 20s and that angst and that anger, and then as I got a little older, in my mid 20s, they told me it was the bipolar. So it was like hormones were always kind of a part of it, but it was never the forefront. It became the bipolar. That was the big end all be all, like, answers all my shit. Makes it a big enough deal in my mind that, like, this is what makes sense. This is how distressing this is for me. Come to find out it's not the bipolar. And all the while I'm taking the bipolar meds, I'm keeping a journal that includes notes about what phase of the moon it is as I'm writing these journals. Because I want to know, like, is there something to the cycles of the moon? Is there something to my period, my menstruation cycle that's throwing off my brain chemistry, my my energetic, my access to like that creative force? Like I'm trying all these different batshit ways of trying to track and come up with answers because the bipolar meds weren't helping. They made it duller, and they made me a little bit more docile and definitely more of a crier. But I was still on the phone crying to my mom or my therapist or my doctor just constantly. Like I was still calling out of work in a panic because I knew I couldn't perform, but I didn't have a good enough excuse to justify not going. I guess all I'm trying to say is so the bipolar meds didn't really help, and anytime I've taken birth control, hormonal like pill, injection birth, the only time I've been on birth control that it hasn't affected that was when I was on the IUD. I had the copper IUD for almost 10 years. And for whatever reason, when I took that out in 2020, summer of 2020, and started hormonal birth control, I started menopause. And I saw doctors for, I think it was like 10 months trying to get answers about that. And it was just, the last doctor I went to said that the mental health problems and the suicide attempts, like it's all a moral failing, and that I need to look at that. And like the conversation was over. She didn't understand what my concern was, and she obviously didn't believe that I'm having symptoms of menopause while taking supplemental estrogen. And that's fine. The doctor I was with before her agreed that there's definitely a lack of estrogen and we need to give you more. So instead of doing a low dose, we bumped me up to a high dose. And I really hoped that would help, but it kicked everything into just high gear. So after I saw the doctor that made it, and the new doctor that made it into a moral issue, I moved away. And the doctor that I was working with felt like when you get into the word's not etymology. What's a hormone doctor? Anyway, when you get into doctoring with hormones, it's a which came first, the chicken or the egg? Is the symptom like how do you diagnose these things? So she was like, right, power to you to say that that's not my strong suit. You need to see somebody else. Good for you. I love that. But the referral was never sent. So I call weeks later and can you check on this for me? I'm just concerned. Oh yeah, sure. Get back on the phone. Oh yeah, that wasn't sent. This still isn't sent. So I never got to see the specialist. I never even got a referral to the specialist. So I went to this other doctor closer to home, and she doesn't understand what my concern is. Apparently not being able to eat or maintain a healthy weight, or having so much vomiting and diarrhea and recurrent nausea, hot flashes, can't sleep at night because I'm drowning in my own sweat. I have to have layers of robes on hand so that I can peel the one that's soaking and cold off and put a new one on. And then when I wake up the second time and the second robe is soaked through and it's now my sheets are all soaked too, then I have like a blanket that I'll pull back. And so I had a strategy for a long time of like how to cope with these things that apparently were just in my head, and menopause doesn't kill people. Even if I was having menopause, why am I going to the doctor? So stopped taking the hormones. Just remembered, it was, there was a reason I had the Paragard IUD, and I always told myself it was because you can't take, it's like one kind of birth control or one kind of hormone in the birth control will make the medicine I was taking for the bipolar not work as well, or vice versa. The bipolar meds will make the birth control not work as well. So, I mean, I always told myself that was the reason, but looking back, when I made that choice, it was like, oh, well, hormonal birth control kind of messes with me anyway, so this is cool. I'm really glad I found this method. So yeah, it's never worked. So I pulled it. I just stopped taking it. And it took a couple months, but I'm cycling again. And it's rare that I have a hot flash. I will, and I thank God I have the wonderful freezer that I do. I can swing the door open and stick my whole upper body. I just crouch. It's ground level. I just crouch my whole body down in there. I tuck my neck in so that big nerve that goes along the back of my neck is getting direct, like blasted with freezer air. And that's usually enough to kind of get my heart rate to slow down, and I feel like I'm not on fire. And I understand menopause doesn't kill people, but I'd like to know why my body thinks that at 32 years old it needed to do that. And they told me it was because of the weight, but I mean, and I, like I said, I'm carrying about 10 more pounds than I was last year, but I don't think that's enough to, like a 10-pound difference is enough to give you your period back. Maybe it is, I don't know. I know that going from 190 something to 120 something in a matter of months isn't okay. I know that's a big deal, and I know that things that do that to you can kill you. And I know that menopause doesn't kill you, but when it happens too soon, you're missing out. Like I'm missing out on a good 20 years. I'm stopping. Like bone density becomes a problem when you don't have estrogen for as long as you need it. Bone density, heart health, like tissue elasticity. I think it's important. Maybe it's not going to kill me, but when you get it when you're not supposed to get it, menopause is a problem. I shouldn't have to explain this to a doctor, ever. and she's the second one. The other one, as nasty as this is, was a gynecologist, was a person who doctors the human female anatomy, hormones, like that's their specialty. And he's the one the first one who looked at me and said, "Why are you here? What do you need from me?" And I have it's my moral failing. It's my moral failing that I would hope that I catch COVID and die from it sooner than later, than be a burden to the few people on this planet for whom it would actually matter if I died of COVID. There aren't that many, and the president of the United States isn't gonna bat an eye. We won COVID. It's over. Didn't you hear? On the 5th of July, I walked into the vape shop and didn't you hear? You don't have to wear that anymore. We won. I'm just gonna go around licking doorknobs, I think. The feeling of I'd rather just get sick and die of COVID than be a burden to anybody is really proof of like how in my brain this idea of money is blood. I don't deserve somebody else's blood. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want your money. I don't want to need your money. I don't want to take your blood so that I can live. I sure as hell don't have an exploitable function. I'm at a loss. Like this nasty, this anger, this resentment, it comes from, I'm sure it's absolutely 100% narcissism. And I can say that. Like I think about myself so much, and it makes me so mad that I don't matter, that I'd rather just die than be a burden, because I know I can't figure this shit out on my, That takes a lot of navel gazing. That takes a lot of self-interest to get so wrapped up in that you can't sleep when you should. Anyway, that video got long. Maybe we'll try listening to like a ghost story. Lecture about yeast. That might be fun.